On today's video, I'd like to do a lessons learned over the Texas winter 2021 storms. Water was clearly an issue, and the two main areas are you either had water mains freeze for your municipalities and break, or you had mains and houses freeze so people couldn't get water, or the more disastrous side is the residential lines froze and then burst. And you had people that had no water and now they had massive damage inside the home. The second big issue is you either had no power because generation of the power shut down, whether that was because natural gas mains froze or water lines to plants froze, or the stations that were working couldn't handle the demand and would shut down. The other reason that people lost power are the power lines that froze and came down. Cell phone service went down in numerous parts across the state. I had personal experience where you could have some service, and that one bar of service that you would have, you wouldn't be able to receive calls or make calls, or send or receive text messages, which text messages are usually kind of your foolproof system. They almost always work. And for several days, those systems are either not working or working poorly. Another issue were consumables. Grocery stores had a big run on their supply, right before the first storm, and then in some cases between the two storms. And their stores were just empty. Everyone was trying to get stuff because they knew they couldn't get anywhere once the storms came, or if they did not plan ahead and in between the two storms, they realized they needed stuff. But the issue was that there was no power in a lot of these places, so people would show up even with cash, but they couldn't make any purchases with the goods. And same thing with gas stations, is there were a few gas stations that had generators, but for the majority of the city, at least in Dallas and the state, a lot of them did not have generators, so you couldn't get gas if you hadn't thought ahead to top off your tank before the storms, even if you weren't driving a lot. But if you were driving around trying to find a store to get food, you're gonna start going through your gas really quick. And then some people were also using their cars as their shelter. They would get out because there was no power or water in their house. They would get in their vehicle, turn it on, and then sleep in it, use the 12-volt charger to charge their phones, that kind of stuff, and they just start eating away at their gasoline. So out of these problems, what can be fixed? What are solutions? And I'm going to approach this from more of a personal or family side or small business side. And these items can be fixed by municipalities, federal, local, state government, whichever degree the issue was. But for individuals, there are some things that you can do that will help you at least get through a similar situation, which might not happen ever again. That's how things go. If you prepare and get all this stuff ready, it'll probably never happen again. But there are some things you can do to be better prepared if it does happen again. What is a reason that aside from the fact that, no power, no water, bad cell phone service, or no cell phone service, what are some reasons to be better prepared? And for me, the way I approach preparedness is your government, whether that's local, state, or federal, have protocols and stuff in place to help in major disasters, which I would consider this winter storm a major disaster. But they don't have unlimited resources. They don't have unlimited people. They can't do everything for everybody. They're there for the big stuff. If you have one area that's just like all the mains are burst, stuff is flooded, there's no chance people can have a roof over their head that night, that kind of stuff. If you don't have running water, or your power is not on but your structure's still okay, you're obviously going to be lower on the priority list to get emergency services. And you're going to help your community get back on their feet quicker if you are in a position where you don't have to use the resources kind of the community or city or state. And that helps everyone in the long run, because then you're not flooding shelter centers, you're not flooding food lines, that kind of stuff, because the people that really need it, that really their whole house burned down or their whole house is flooded or so whatever it might be, they can be focused on getting the help. The first thing is water. The first thing that is a solution that you can do at a small business, small family, large family kind of level. We love water bricks. And I'll do a review, I'll stick a picture up here of what a water brick looks like. But they're basically like Lego that are, I think, 3.5 gallons each. They have a cap on them, and then they have an adapter that's like a cap with a spigot on it. And we use that for a very long time. And they're light enough relatively that you can pick them up and tip them in the toilet to flush the toilet. They're just really good items, and they're relatively thin and not too wide, so you can stick them under beds and closets. And since they are like Lego, you can stick them anywhere and then just kind of stack them, and they're more they have a more sturdy structure. With water, there's all kinds of stuff. 72 hours of drinking water is good. What I'm hoping that a lot of people learn from this storm is when the water freezes coming in, yes, you cannot cook or have your faucet for drinking water, but you cannot flush either. So my rule that I like to try to keep is at a minimum 2 days of water for everything. So that's, boiling water on the stove to shower with, or warming water on the stove to shower with, flushing toilets 3 or 4 times a day, water to drink, to cook and sanitize, all that kind of stuff, because that can be a lot of water. If you're a family of 4, say, that can really stack up. And the rule of a gallon per person per day. Yeah, when it's summertime, that's drinking. What we found out for our family is we got ourselves down for toilets, cooking, cleaning, and showering. We were down to about 12 gallons, give or take a couple gallons, every 2 days. That's what we were going through. Power. So this is one that is going to be more expensive, and it's going to take some skill or money to get everything set up and going. So what you have to take into consideration is what are you wanting? Are you wanting a backup battery just to keep your internet and TV up for an hour? Are you wanting a portable generator that you can just stash away because you don't have much space, that you can run your fridge and internet, and a couple lights in the house and a heater, air conditioner plugged in? Do you want to go larger? Do you want a whole home generator that's a standby generator? That's something that when the power goes off, it takes between 20 and 40 seconds and it kicks back on and everything's running like normal. It takes over the whole house from the grid. The other option is renewable, so like solar and wind. Solar is obviously the more popular residential version, or residential option. And you definitely need space if you're going to do solar. You need a house. You can't do an apartment, obviously, if you're going to do solar. And you also need a way to save that power to batteries. Generac has a new system. Tesla has their system. There's several versions of home battery packs with solar. And everything has their pros and cons, right? So solar is going to be very expensive on the front end, but once it's set up and your batteries are sized right, and your panels are sized right, you're basically set with getting your power, using it, whatever you need to do, and you don't need fuel, or you're not dependent on fuel lines coming in or freezing or anything like that. But you need room. Portable generators, you need, again, some semblance of room outside so you don't get CO inside. And you need to know, you need to have cables to run. It's a lot more, it's much more manual setup. And then whole home generators are the more common turnkey options. They have various sizes, but Generac and Kohler are kind of the leading whole home standby options. And the only thing that you really have to worry about with that is your fuel option. So the standard for residential is usually propane or natural gas, depending on your setup. And with propane, obviously they're your finite time, but it's local, so you don't have to worry about mains being turned off. So like earthquake area or natural gas mains freezing, which has happened in Texas, that's not a concern. But you do have a finite amount, so you need to size your generator, size the fuel tank, know what you can and don't have to use. What you do have to use, do not have to use. There we go. And the other option, if you are in an area with natural gas, is you hook up to the line, and it's theoretically, you know, an indefinite power supply. There are a few caveats with that. One is if you are in an earthquake or wildfire prone area, sometimes they will turn the mains off to mitigate, you know, huge issues. So if you have an earthquake and the natural gas main breaks and it's still on, obviously it's a huge fire. Wildfire season, you have mains going to houses, say the house burns down, all of a sudden you got gas spewing out of, you know, lines and stuff. So usually those are turned off. You know, and the other big issue, which is not very common, but it can happen, is if the demand is so high that the natural gas company has start shutting off branches. So say there is a natural gas generator for some kind of critical infrastructure, and then right next to it's a big neighborhood. The possibility exists, though it's low, that they would turn off residential to then keep the steady flow going to the critical infrastructure. So it's just something to consider. They do have some diesel ones for large commercial applications. You know, you can do special cases for, you know, large homes for huge diesel setups, but typically it's going to be propane or natural gas. The next thing was communication. Cell phones were having major issues calling into areas that were really hard hit by this winter storm, and then people trying to call out, they would get ringing. It wouldn't just cut them off, but it would never connect, or it would connect and it would just go straight to voicemail. Same thing with text messages. Usually text messages are kind of your thing that everyone talks about because they usually get through. But in this circumstance, they were not getting through. I think that the systems were so far down and generators were out. You know, from what it seemed like from driving around in Dallas, they had some towers up, so enough people could get through to, you know, say 911 or something if they had to. But it was barely any service. So what are some options for that? There are a few. The first one is just getting some two-way radios. That's an easy option. You know, I'm a huge fan of the Midland GXT1000s, and they are really good. They run on AA proprietary Midland. They are awesome radios. I have not broken those things, and I've used them a lot. And those are really good for a couple miles in the city, and you can use them around the house, neighborhood. So if you're going to go walk around and there's no cell phone service, no electricity, but you want to go down somewhere, or your kids want to go play somewhere because things are starting to calm down but there's still no power, you can give them a radio and then you can just talk. The other option is a GoTenna mesh. I've reviewed those before. It basically turns your phone. You can still text to people inside your GoTenna mesh network, so it's become an easier transition. The range is shorter, but if you have made a community or neighborhood with mesh nodes, then with GoTenna mesh nodes, then you can all text, and easy. So that's an option too. And then another option for more long range is a satellite phone. For that network to go down, you'd be looking at a, critical, major, catastrophic disaster. And, anything's possible, but for the Iridium network to go down completely, things would be really, really bad. And we got nowhere close to that kind of situation. So that's an option, satellite phones. They do cost. You can get some from the non-Iridium version. I think it's Inmarsat. And they're about $600, and you can just do the card where you activate it when you need to. And that's a cheaper option. The next thing is little or no food in stores, little or no food. And this is probably one of the easiest ones to do out of all of them. When you go to the store, you just get a little bit extra of non-perishable stuff. So, canned things, freeze-dried fruit and that kind of stuff. That stuff is going to last for a while. The other option you can do is Thrive, or any freeze-dried food. I love Thrive. They're the ones we love. And, just buy a little bit each month. And they are expensive, but you get what you pay for. But get a little bit each month. And if this, big storm or hurricane or whatever might be happens again, you have food that, in a pinch you could just eat out of the can. But that you can hydrate with some water. It could be cold, it wouldn't be great, but you could have, hydrated food. So that's an option. And I'll also put a link to Thrive in the description below. We love Thrive. I've done tons of videos on it. They are healthier by any gauge you want to put against the freeze-dried food industry. They can be your normal groceries. They're just better in every aspect, minus price. They are going to be more expensive, but again, if you want quality stuff to really live on, Thrive is going to be the option to go with. To conclude, I hope this was helpful for our lessons learned on the Texas 2021 winter storms. I often wonder, same thing with Sandy, Hurricane Sandy, how much when people go through this stuff, when they say, we're going to get a generator, we're going to keep food, we're going to, all these things they're going to do, and they're dead set they're going to do it when things get back, up and going again. And then, the TV starts working again, internet starts working again, and, a week passes by, but everything's back to normal, and they just forget all about it. So, I'm curious to see where we're at in 6 months to a year. If we have another winter storm like this, in the next couple of years, what is it going to be like? Are people going to be better prepared, or are we going to be in the same situation where you've got millions of people that are just in really bad shape from stuff, and stuff that with time could be mitigated? You might not be doing super great, and you might not be thriving. Hopefully you would be, but you would be at a, like a homeostasis point where you're warm or you're cool, depending on the time of year. Your stomachs have some kind of food in them, and you're hydrated. And if you can, you're safe where you are. So if you can handle those 4 things, then usually you're okay.